Hi, everybody. Welcome to Experts Dig In with Doggies for Dementia. This is our YouTube show, our program, our video blog, our place where we get to share wonderful information, important information with family caregivers, and also a lot of professional caregivers listening too, because today we happen to have two professional caregivers, right? And personal caregiver. And gosh, we just welcome you to the program. Doggies for Dementia. Oh, yeah. Well, Jennifer Prescott, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I just want to talk a little bit about Doggies for Dementia, because we have some people who don't know exactly what that is, and I get that. And so Doggies for Dementia is a nonprofit business, and we support families, and our big mission is to raise awareness and help families have a beautiful legacy of their loved one. And so we raise awareness with photography, and with families, we just get out there and tell those stories. And the reason it's Doggies for Dementia is we add dogs to the mix. And I get asked a lot why we do that. And it is funny. I just really had a light bulb moment a few days ago listening to someone talk. And I thought, there is just so much information out there about dementia. And yet we hear it like millions, an epidemic, the silver tsunami, and it's fear-based, and it's true, but it's based in fear. And we just move away. And that stigma and isolation is so huge for people impacted by dementia, and the loneliness. And Doggies for Dementia, though, is based in compassion and a kind approach and loving. And so our photos are very candid and joy-filled, and we take the moment. And I think that's why people are interested in reading the stories and learning about it in a way that's not fearful. And that's what I think is going to take the shift for all of us to say, okay, I want to know more about this. And that way I can be more supportive. Because when we're scared, it's hard. It's really hard. Right. Yeah. So that was my epiphany this week, Jennifer.
I love that.
That was right. And it was like right here for me, right in front of my face. And it wasn't until someone said there was a statement. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why. We approach it with love and compassion and things. And so that's my little story about Doggies for Dementia. You can learn a lot more about that on our website and social media. And today I'm delighted to have Jennifer Prescott, who is the founder and CEO of Blue Water Homecare and fellow nurse, and so much more. And so I'm going to let you do a little bit more of your own introduction, because I know you can do it so much better than me. I appreciate that, because you've got just such a well-rounded, multifaceted experience base.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, Carmen. Thank you for having me. I've been a nurse for, 26 years. I can't believe it, but it is 26 years. I became a nurse because my father ended up having open heart surgery. And I remember walking into the intensive care unit when he was freezing cold. And the nurse was next to me and she was explaining everything to me. And she was saying, he's really cold because they cool the body temperature down. They want to make sure that the blood flow stays in the core of the body. And, I just noticed that I was so nervous, but then my fear started to alleviate. And so she just held my hand and put my hand to my dad's hand. And that was the moment at 13 years old when I knew that I wanted to become a nurse. And so that has been the pathway that I had. I went to the University of Delaware. I was a blue hen. I'm from Newark, Delaware. And then I subsequently worked at Duke University Hospital, and I got my master's degree in nursing leadership from Duke University. And so I can tell you that my love and passion has been caring for seniors. So we all have, we have parents that we have to take care of. And so it's one of those things that I sort of fell into hospice care. I had my son at the time, he's 19 now, but he was, I decided to go back to work when he was 13 months old. And I found a hospice position as a clinical liaison. And that was the moment I sort of fell in love with in-home care and hospice care. And so that was where I connected. I felt like that was my niche. I figured, I just feel like God has me on the planet to do this work, and it's such a privilege. And so I'm being able to meet people like you, and just being in the community in Central Texas. We have a non-medical home care agency called Blue Water Homecare, and we provide, services for over 100 families in our community. We've served over 600 families since we've started about 4 years ago, and my husband and I started it. So we're locally owned and operated.
That's so cool. And I just want to say, when I hear you speak, I think, there's one thing of having goals and even a mission per se, but it's that calling that you get, that no matter what you do, it doesn't go away until you follow it in some way. It's a calling so much bigger than anything we can really understand, I think. And it's funny, I bet when you first started, even you had no idea where it would end up, but you knew you just needed to follow that path.
I agree. I think there's a lot of faith that's involved. I mean, when you start a business, and you obviously started a business too, you've started a nonprofit organization. So there's a lot of faith that comes, with that. It's very scary. I was a hospice director. I ran a very large hospice in Round Rock, built it, had an amazing team. It's flourishing now. We started at 70 patients. We built it to about 140 patients a day. In about, a couple of years. I mean, we really rocked and rolled, but I just felt this pull I noticed that families, in hospice care, and what it's like, and many of the families are dealing with this, if you have home health or hospice, that's intermittent care. They're popping in and out, but sometimes families need more, folks that have, that are struggling with dementia, Parkinson's disease, any of these types of, as just general aging. I was noticing that families really needed a really good option. And I sort of felt led, because as a nurse, I felt, gosh, I have such a clinical background. I thought it was really important. It could be really helpful. And it's really been pretty incredible. And I feel, it's really scary at first when you do that. Thank goodness for my husband. He's the money guy. So I'm the dreamer, and he's the money guy. So he's the MBA and takes care of all the back end, and I'm the one that does all the front end operations. And so we don't know where God's going to leave us right now, or lead us. I feel that there's next things for us. I know that in the future, we would love to have a nonprofit organization that's really important to us, where we can help to provide free services to families in our community, because that's something that's very needed.
Oh yeah,
very
definitely
needed.
Yeah, I just so love that. And yeah, I need a money guy.
He's pretty good.
It's hard to be the dreamer, and then and this is the reality. And it's I think when we take those steps, it's like taking a step almost off a ledge, not knowing where the bottom is, right? And not the bottom, but like the next layer. And then how far can you walk there, because you're not done yet. And then you're climbing, and then you're falling a little bit and climbing again. And but it's a calling, you have it in mind. And I'm just thinking, like, this is so much like caregiving. There are those days when you're like, I got this, I got it, no problem. And then there's others, you're standing in the corner crying, oh, this can't be it. This can't be it.
Oh, I know. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but we take care of my mother-in-law. And so we moved her in with us about 3 years ago. My husband and I got married 4 years ago, moved my mother-in-law in with us, and we also have 4 children. So we blended 2 families, and we chose our house because it has a small casita attached to it. So we were able to keep her, and she was having some early memory issues. And so at this point, she has early stage dementia. And so the problem is that, we're in the sandwich generation. So my husband and I are both working, and we have, children from the ages of 8 to 19. Plus, we're also taking care of a mother-in-law. And we also are, my father's in North Carolina, which is really difficult. And then we're trying to build a business and run a business where we've got about 130 employees. So there's many days I can tell you that we break down. I mean, we break down. Just because I'm a nurse, and I just want to tell everybody out there, just because I'm a nurse, I don't have all the answers, and I don't always do it right. We had a situation this past week where my mother-in-law, I noticed that her behavior was changing a little bit, and she seemed more disheveled. She wasn't, and this was the week before the snow apocalypse, Snowvid 2021. We noticed that she was more disheveled. So normally she, takes care of herself, gets herself up, takes her medications. we noticed that she was more disheveled. And so I was like, okay, let me go back to her medications. And so thank goodness I was a nurse and I thought of that, because she wasn't even aware of the situation. What we found out is that she had her medications. We use a medication planner because it's just easier for us. We noticed she took her medications in the morning, but her night medications, she did not realize, because it was a clear Medi planner, she was missing one of the medications. She just wasn't taking it.
Oh.
Because her perception, her depth perception was off. She took the pink pill. She did not take the other pill. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we had to do, and this is kind of those sort of like thinking outside the box, how do you be clever in communication with your physician? We were able to get the physician to say, oh, no problem. He can take, she can take that antidepressant in the morning. And I'm telling you, 3 days later, completely different person.
Completely different.
Completely different person, and that's something that we see as caregivers. What do we do? I had another family that called me about a similar situation, but we started talking, was your loved one, were they having trouble drinking? Were they not drinking? Well, how was their urine? Is it really dark? And she was like, gosh, we're so focused on the snowpocalypse that we really haven't made sure that it was her husband, that he was drinking.
Right.
Come to find out, she called me this afternoon right before we got on the call. He had a urinary tract infection, which is not super common for a man, but it was because everybody is trying to take care of their basic needs, food and water, but sometimes they forget about the hydration. And that's one of the things with dementia, that we have to make sure that people are well hydrated.
Oh yeah.
So
our bodies are such high percentage water, and you just forget to drink.
Exactly.
Drink, and if there isn't a reminder, and the dehydration, that sense, oh my goodness, I'm thirsty, I need to get a drink, is sometimes lacking.
It is.
I want to go back for 1 second. I think when we become caregivers, and no matter what our profession, and including nurses, physicians, and I did home care too, by the way. I was a lover of home care. Yeah. In my 44 years.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah. There was a lot of home care, and even house calls, home visits as a nurse practitioner. And I just noticed it didn't matter your education, your experience, how many businesses you own. When it comes down to someone you love that you're taking care of, it's like a level playing field, and it's all like, we're all in a panic and worry, and aren't quite sure how to approach it, and worried we're going to miss something important. And I used to just take a deep breath. Like, there's a solution to every problem, and almost always it's a simple solution. That's that true. We're looking and thinking that it's something bigger than what it could be. And you always start with the simple solutions first, that are the basic needs taken care of. And
that's true. And I see people all the time, and I think, we're guilty of it too. It's very overwhelming to take care of, an elderly person in general, or somebody who's maybe not elderly, but they're getting an early stage of something. It's very stressful. And the first thing that goes, and we know that, especially when you become a new mom, is you forget taking care of yourself. And I'm, terrible at that sometimes. And I have to stop. And I love, one of the things that you always do is you kind of take a moment and you breathe. And I think if you stop as a caregiver, and this is good in your life in general, if you stop and take a breath, and, one of my staff actually gave me a really nice little, it was like a daily devotional that I read every day with coffee. It just, it's funny. You start that in the morning, you read it, and you may have to go back to it during the day, but it really helps to help you like frame, because I think it's so overwhelming. And sometimes like there's so much piled up because you don't know how to prioritize, because your kids need things, your spouse needs something. And I always say, even to my kids, you say yes to something, you say no to something else. And we all do that every day in our daily lives. Yeah. Do I go clean, do the laundry, or do I go read a book? And so I want people to have permission that, and I'm one that likes a clean house, and it hasn't been perfect lately. I'll be honest with you. It really hasn't. But I think you have to come to those conclusions and acceptance for yourself, that it's okay, and give yourself permission. Because if not, you're going to like live in this world of like just spinning around of stress that really is not going to help you. And I can tell you it's not going to help the person that you're caring for at all.
Of course not. People you can sense things when you walk in a room, whether you realize it or not, you're feeling it. And I always say I begin my day with my top goals, my top priorities.
Me too.
And I do that like deep breath, like, and count. And then the same thing with the exhale, and just like 3 times. My body's relaxed. I'm like, okay, now I can think about this and think about, okay, what's the priority? And I will stop and ask myself, wait a second, is this part of the priority today? Or like maybe if I walked by and there's clutter on the dining room table, I'm like, wait a second, is that my top priority right now? Because especially when you work from home, or caregivers are at home, you have a priority, you're caring for someone, you also have the house, and then you've got children. You're like, well, where are my priorities? And that's a very personal decision. What are your priorities? And it can change from day to day, but there's a solution. You just kind of, okay, that can wait.
Well, I think in setting expectations, but also, I had a situation yesterday where a family called me, and the wife was really frustrated at her husband because he's becoming much more disheveled lately. And she had some folks over for dinner, and he just would not, she kept telling him 5 times, can you please brush your hair? Can you please brush your hair? Can you please brush your hair? And so we were talking on the phone, and we have a great relationship, and we had talked about 6 months ago for services, and she decided to wait. And then she called me yesterday and said, I'm ready for care. And I said, well, tell me your frustration. And she said, well, why wouldn't he brush his hair? And I said, well, let's talk about that for a minute. And I said, take a deep breath. And she said, okay. I said, close your eyes. She said, okay. I said, so tell me, what are the steps that it takes to go brush your hair? I said, just walk me through it. So she did that. And she's like, well, I have to hear that, go brush your hair. I have to know to get up. I have to know where to go, which is I have to go to the bathroom. I have to know to open the drawer that has the brush in or the comb. I have to pick it up. I have to use it on my hair. I have to put it away. I have to close the drawer. I have to leave. I mean, there's like 25 steps. Same thing as like grocery shopping. And so families, a lot of times, and I can tell you that sometimes I'm guilty of it too. And my husband too. It's like, hey, why can't they just do this? But if you take a deep breath and you close your eyes and realize how many steps it actually takes to do that, it's kind of like the aha moment. And she was like, oh.
Yes. And for people with dementia, there's depth perception. So just walking to the bathroom can be a challenge, and finding the right bathroom, finding the right drawer. So it's easy.
And not to use the drawer to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Because truly, I can't tell you how many times I've had families call me like, yeah, well, my husband's peeing in the closet.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so we need to we need to make it so that he can't pee in the closet anymore. But that's real life. I mean, y'all, that's real life.
Yeah.
You know, they'll pee in a trash can. That's definitely happens a lot, but those are the kind of things that you have to think about. You can laugh about them now and chuckle, but man, when it happens, like you get really frustrated.
Yeah. Really
frustrated.
Right. And it's this kind of things you don't plan around, and you're like, oh my gosh, now I need to clean this up too. And
and the truth is, it's kind of like with the dogs. Sometimes they pee in the same spot again.
So really, it is like the rug is so much more popular than the floor. That would be easy to clean.
But this is real life. I mean, this is for people to know that, this is not alone. This is why, support groups and being able to this, video blog that you're doing is so important for people. I mean, I love, there's so many blessings that I think have come from COVID-19. I do a lot of blessings for me. I think my family and I are very close. We have dinner together every night. That is a priority for my family. There's been a lot of blessings, but I think that, there's some things about connecting with people that I think is a really good thing. And I think that face to face, if you can't see someone, and obviously things are opening up now, but I think supporting people is a really good thing. And it's just really important for people to feel like, how can they connect So I would encourage people to set up a free Zoom. We probably have the professional editions, both of us, but anybody can set up a free Zoom and then start to connect with people.
Right. The big difference between the paid and the free is the amount of time. And if you time out, you just log back on and start a new one. And I think things that used to be more used by people in business are now more commonplace, which is really interesting that Zoom has become a verb.
I know.
That's true. And things that, and people are learning and needed, it just needed to, because it's either that or be very, very isolated. And
we've had to pivot, like in our company, because normally, we're going to be jumping out and doing evaluation and RN assessment, seeing our clients. And sometimes, especially during the snowstorm, sometimes we can't physically get to them and do the nursing assessment first, but we can Zoom with somebody and be able to like fast track them to services. And then we get over to their house. So things like that, we have had to pivot. And I think, you can find blessings in the middle of and a lot of people have had a lot of tragedies, but we can find some blessings in there. And I think for our company, it's definitely, we've had some efficiencies that we've been able to improve our communication. I think we have now we're doing all these, both in person now, as well as Zoom education for our certified nurses assistants and our caregivers. And that's been a great way, because a lot of them are all over Central Texas. So this has been an amazing way that maybe we wouldn't have thought of it, to be able to, keep their education and training up to date. It's been great for them. I mean, it really has. And of course we love when they're in the office, that's our favorite thing.
Of course.
For a while, we weren't able to do that safely.
Yeah. And I'm still really careful about it and keeping distance. And it's been a lot more limited. And, a lot of the families that we support and photograph and things, I'm not able to get there.
Yeah, I know.
There's lockdown and just the various things. And we've had to, instead, I said, well, if our job is raising awareness, we're going to talk about what's happening in the world of dementia right now, with what's happening, what an important story and relevant that is. And I used to think about we'll just have to think outside the box and think there is no box. Now it's there is no box. Let's just let that one go. And I don't think that's such a bad thing. I think it's really interesting to stay on top of things and to hear what's happening. And
I think one of the things that I'm seeing is we're seeing more and more families taking care of their loved ones at home.
Yes.
That was a huge, we probably, when COVID-19 started in, late February, early March, we had a little bit of decrease in the number of clients that we had on service. And then we doubled our business.
I can imagine.
It was insane because, they couldn't, because they couldn't either get in or, for whatever reason. And I just have huge kudos to the memory cares and the facilities and the communities out there. They really are warriors. They are warriors. They have dealt with so much. And, our job is to help to support them, because it's definitely been challenging, but I love the way that they all have really worked to pivot. And I think being clever in the things that they've done. And I love what you're doing. I think it really gives people hope and inspires them. And I love the pictures I can see in the background of the kids, the dogs. I just love it. It's just, it's awesome. It's awesome. What kind of things do you think that, when you talk to family members and caregivers, what are things that they bring up to you that are sort of like their hot spots, or their areas that they're really stressed out about? Are there areas that you find?
Yeah, I think one of the things I've been hearing a lot more of is wondering that they have a really, when they're in the midst of it, and I can really relate to this, when you're in the midst of the dark night, the dark of the night, will you ever see the sun again? And the thought is, this is really hard. And yet I'm faced with the guilt. Do I get a caregiver? Do I not? Yes. What can I afford? My income has dropped because I'm not able to do the job I used to do. I've been at home more, but it's hard, and they have a difficult time, of course. For instance, I had one say, I could be my husband's wife, I can be his lover, his friend, and I can be his caregiver, but I can't do both. I cannot do both. And finding a way to make sense of that, and then trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel. This is a long course for most, and it gets worse in time for most. There are plateaus, and then finding, I think that's part of the attraction of the program. Like, we love to find joy in things.
Absolutely.
Where there's joy in everything, even the sadness, the worst of things. There's some kind of blessing in there too. And finding that and acknowledging it is hard. I think it was Carolyn Mace. I used to read her books. I don't know what she's doing anymore. It's been like 20 years, but she would talk about the dark of the night, and that you must allow yourself to go through that and not worry about what you should be doing, where you should be, what's going to happen in the future, but just experience it full out, knowing you will come out of it when the time is you should come out of it, because it's the struggle to get through it that causes the agony.
I would agree. And I think those sundowning periods, like 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, the kind of witching hour, it's really challenging. And then it can like elongate all the way through, the rest of the night. And it's very scary in the middle of the night. Like it just is.
It really is.
Yeah. It really is. And you question yourself, like, am I doing the right thing? What should I be doing differently? Why did I just yell at mom? Like, or why did it, and that's a real thing, we take care of families all the time where, I just yelled at my mom. I'm like, okay, well, tell me about that.
Right. And the next comment might well be, and I could never forgive myself for that, because I just did that. I can't believe it. Nobody else goes through this. And this was one thing I learned when writing my book, right? I'm following these families after, and I'm telling them their stories and listening. And some of them were patients of mine in the clinic, in the neurology clinic. And they would tell me some of their fears and struggles. And I said, we had 45-minute visits in the clinic. I was very, very, Seton did a wonderful job with that. And I said, I just have to ask, why didn't you tell me? Because there was a real intimacy there, and they knew they could call me whenever and things. And they said, here are the big fears. I thought you would tell me I'm not able to take care of him or her anymore, and that they'd have to be put in a home, and I promised I would never do that. Or I thought I'm the only one that struggles with this, and you think there's something wrong with me.
It happens all the time.
Everybody goes through it, but they're feeling alone in it and don't want to say.
Well, that's true. And I think, we're putting in a society of kind of to do everything, like, as a woman or whatever. I mean, that we should be able to do it all.
Perfectly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's just not realistic. It's not realistic, because, we have caregivers that are in their 30s, 20s. We take care of someone that she's, in her early 30s, that she's taking care of her mom.
Yes.
I mean, there's hardly any support for her. You know what I mean? And the thing is, it's hard to be a daughter or a son when you have to provide personal care for them.
Yes.
And so, there's usually a time when you can start to add a little bit of care, or maybe add and I feel like the adult daycare centers, I'm hoping by the end of this year, those are going to open back up.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's a really good option. We've got Age of Central Texas. There's a lot of really good, you probably know too, of adult daycare centers that could be really helpful for people, which is very cost effective.
Yeah. For those who've never heard of that, explain what an adult day care center is.
Sure. So an adult day care center, you typically pay on a daily rate for it. And it's, usually through a nonprofit. And so it's subsidized. I know that there's also a large church in the area that's going to be, starting one as well. But it's where it's kind of like a child's daycare, where you would bring your loved one there. They would be able to have, meals. They would be able to help with toileting. There's certain stipulations that they have to have, but they have activities throughout the whole day. That to me is a really cost-effective way. And usually, the rates could be, I've seen, $30 to $50 a day, sometimes even more. It depends, don't quote me on that amount, but that's a really good way to be able to allow somebody to, you know, have a job during the day. They can, and even sometimes they pick them up in like a van as well. Now, again, there's certain stipulations. So you would have to make sure that, you know, you abide by those things and that your person, you know, the person that you're caring for is actually appropriate for that level of care.
Mm-hmm.
But that to me is like a great first thing. That can make a huge difference. I mean, a huge difference for all the parties involved.
Yeah.
Now, of course, right now, you know, I was talking to somebody on the phone yesterday. I was thinking, gosh, what about if we started some type of movement? You know how there's nanny shares? What about if we had like a couple families getting together that had like a home care agency like us, where they might have, we take care of 2 people and they share the cost. I mean, it literally just, I was in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru.
Oh gosh, I think that's a brilliant idea.
I don't know. I was on the phone with a friend of mine. Hopefully she'll listen. Her name's Sharon Butler from Riverbend Church. And I was telling her about a program that we did. And I was like, what about if we could do like a nanny share, but we could do it for elders? And she was like, I love this idea. You know, and I'm like, I don't even know. I mean, literally, like, I haven't even thought it how that would work or whatever, but what a great way for families to support each other. Sure, they'd have to live together, you know, because we're getting, you know, students now are doing these, what do they call them? They're like study groups or whatever, where they're doing homeschooling together, like for the students that are not going to classes. I thought, what a great thing. You have one caregiver taking care of 2 people. Obviously, it would have to be safe. But I mean, that's like an idea of sort of how do we think outside the box? How do we make something affordable and increase accessibility?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant idea. And it could be as creative as the families decide to do it, right? So
exactly,
whether they take turns or one place is more
conducive,
conducive at the time, and how it's going to work out. I think that's a wonderful idea. And yeah, in so many ways, because that piece of not just for caregivers, but for the person who has isolation and the loneliness and not seeing other people and not really understanding in many cases why that is, from, you know, reminded every day. But it doesn't, I mean, it's complicated for everybody. What the heck is going on? What's next? What's going to happen? And I can only imagine if you're lacking that cognitive ability to really grasp it, how much more difficult the whole thing would be. Like, what the heck is going on? Why can't I go see my buddy down the street? And and those who went to daycare before, you know, a day program, why aren't I seeing my friends? And we're not doing the same stimulating kind of activities. And it's just a huge shift that does contribute to decline.
Well, depression, you know, I mean, depression, a lot of, you know, our folks, you know, obviously with even mild cognitive impairment all the way, you know, they're going to have short-term memory issues. And so they're not going to understand. Like my mother-in-law, she'll come downstairs and ask about, you know, we want her to get immunized before, because she's, you know, got, you know, mild cognitive impairment, but we want her to be able to get immunized before she, you know, goes out and about, but she doesn't quite understand that. Right. And so it's that story that we have to tell her, which is frustrating, because we're like, we've been living this for a year and we've told you this like 1,000 times, but it's just one of those times where you just need to take a breath and then reframe to yourself, okay, look, she doesn't realize, or he doesn't realize what we're saying. And I just think that's really hard. Like, it's easier said than done. But I think right now, like, we have to capture these moments with our families, like we do. And what you're doing is so important. You know, we had a situation 2 days ago when the kids were playing a card game with my mother-in-law. And it was just, they were just all sitting there. And what a wonderful, like, intergenerational thing. Do I think she fully understood everything with the card game? She probably understood more than I would. But it was those moments that, like, the kids were just like beaming, you know, their eyes were so like, Mimi's playing with us, Mimi's playing with us. So it doesn't have to be perfect. If you can create these moments that are sort of like magical, I think that's what we need to focus on versus like the negative things that occur in your minds when you're a caregiver. Because I feel like there's a lot of negative. There can be some blessings, But if we don't reframe our brains and sort of recognize those really like inspiring things that happen, then we're going to focus on the hard stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we need to have the wins. Like we need to like be,
Gotta have the win.
we got to have the wins.
Yeah, and there are various Facebook groups for caregivers that are supportive, and it's kind of long people who've never met each other that have a really strong commitment to support each other. And I read it, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And that's a beautiful relationship that would have never happened had they not been a part of that group.
And sharing. I think like sharing and learning for people that have gone through it and are going through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I'm on the Capital Area Parkinson's Society. I'm on their executive committee, and you know, it's so inspiring to see like when all the groups get together and they start sharing their stories and their best practices.
Yeah.
Because then you know that you're not alone. You know, and there's so many things out there for people, and I just feel like there's a lot of people that are just worried. I think it was hard in the beginning to get people up on Zoom, but I feel like now people are getting a lot more used to Zoom. And so I do feel like it's been really helpful.
And learning how to place their cameras so that they're lit, just simple things.
I know, that's true.
They've learned, right? And I want to revisit one thing, and I even think maybe it's a great way to close out. And you talked about it when your children were playing cards with your mother-in-law, and across the board, the most valued images and memories. It's kind of like if you're like in Snowmageddon, people's pipes burst, water everywhere. And if you were told, go in and grab what's most important to you, your most valuable second to people, you know, you're not going to grab, for most of us, we're not going to grab our high-end electronics, and we're grabbing the memories. Oh, I want my baby's first shoes, and I want this photo album. And it's those mundane memory that seem mundane, but are not at all. They're the spice on it all that make life beautiful, are those moments we take for granted. And part of why I love what I do, because I'm there as like a fly on the wall, right? And I'm just like, just do what you do, and I'll get that. And in across the board, the ones people love the most, the ones like, how did you get that? Look at the look on their face. How did you? I'm like, I was just there and just observed, and it's hard to miss that kind of beauty. But yeah, we do it all the time. I think photography taught me that.
Well, and I think, you know, one of the things that a lot of people, which I love that you actually have the photos displayed, because I think encouraging people to like, actually don't just keep those photos on your phone, like actually get those printed out. Yeah. Even if you don't have a lot of money, I can tell you, like, there's always like free, like Walgreens, you can get a free 8x10, usually once a month on Walgreens, if you just look for it.
Yes.
Print out those photos, because that really is capturing those amazing memories. And it doesn't do any good if it's just on your phone.
No.
Don't get me wrong. I probably have 5,000 on my phone.
Yeah. But you know what? The likelihood that then you'll take it and savor those moments are really very slim as compared to, like, I'm looking at my grandkids right now, right? I see their faces every day right there. And when it's on my phone, it's just different. There's something about the tangible.
I know.
I totally agree. And there are ways of doing it there. I mean, from the very basic to the, you know, the higher end, depending on what you do, but it's those moments. And I think for caregivers, and I've heard you say this, it's like, don't forget to celebrate those moments, the nightly dinner with the family, the card games. I mean, those are the magical moments of life that when I think those are the moments, like when I think to myself, for instance, when there's a crisis or something, I'm like, wait a second, am I going to remember this on my deathbed? Is this going to be what I remember?
Does it matter?
Does it really matter? The answer is always no. True. But if you ask me about just rolling on the floor and playing with my grandsons and laughing, will I remember that? Yes. Yes, I will.
You know, and including, so one of the things I did want to say, which is a kind of a reminder to people, is that when people have dementia, a lot of times it's difficult for them to focus and hear because there's too much going on. So making sure that you are having a conversation and including them in the conversation and really being direct, because I think it's really easy for someone that's experiencing dementia or, you know, any type of memory issues to sort of not really pay attention or just kind of look the other way. But I think if we engage them, I think that's really helpful. Engage them, you know, with cooking dinner safely. There's a lot of things they can still do. And so that would be kind of one of my last, you know, help making a salad or something, maybe not chopping the things, but, you know, putting the things together. So just not forget to include, you know, those people, you know, in daily activities, because there's a lot of things they still can do. What if I was on the phone with a family, I'd have to tell you yesterday, they were saying that their loved one is going to Florida, I guess in like 2 weeks. And one of his favorite things, he has a house in Fort Lauderdale, is to sweep the condo, like outside for the whole place. He'll go for 2 hours and sweep the condo. But you know what? He feels like he is participating and he has, you know, value to that, you know, cohort that he's a part of. And so find that niche that, you know, your loved one, if they still like to knit or they still, whatever it is, make sure that you include them. You'd be surprised. I mean, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. It just made me think of one of my patient in the clinic, and the family's like, oh my gosh, every evening about 4 o'clock. And it's like, and I said, you know, get a bunch of hand towels, like go to the dollar store and get a bunch of hand towels, put them in like a laundry basket and say, hey mom, can you fold the laundry for me? And then when that's done, take it in the other room, dump it out, mess it up, and say, hey mom, can you fold the laundry for me?
Exactly.
And it is just so like, contributing and doing something is, I don't think you can say enough about that. And the gratitude that goes with it. It's the basic values, right? The gratitude,
it's true.
Contributing.
And sometimes as a caregiver, I'll be honest, you have to fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So action, you know, you have to start doing that action, and then the thoughts will come after. Like sometimes you just have to, it's kind of like, you know, those times where you tell yourself that you're going to go walk for, you know, a couple miles and you don't want to get out of bed or whatever. I may or may not do that most mornings, but it's like, you just have to put on those shoes and you need to walk the walk, and then the rest will follow.
And isn't that the truth with just about everything?
It is
something new. It's or even with a new mindset. So maybe you've been a caregiver for a while, but you're like, okay, I want this new mindset. And so you integrate some of the new habits and you start slow and you say, okay, I'm going to journal this morning. I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to journal, or I'm going to read something that's inspiring, or I'm going to take a minute and do my 5-second breaths and feel kind of centered here. And so it's the same when you become a new parent, or
it's true.
You start to go to school. You know, if you remember what it was like as a kid, you had to create new patterns
and have gratitude. I mean, you know, I think everybody's always like, oh, gratitude journal, but it really does work. Like if you think about 3 things, I mean, sometimes you got to think hard, because there's some days you're like, I don't know if I'm grateful for today. You know, I'm just really not sure. Or maybe you're grateful because you drove by a Starbucks and you were able to get a cold brew or whatever. But just whatever it is, like you got to switch your mindset to something positive, because if you get into that negative, and I would just say self-care is really important. Do not if you're starting to feel depressed, or you don't even know, a lot of times, you know, people ask me about depression. They're like, well, how do I know if I'm depressed? The answer is that you can't usually say you're depressed. It's like things you're just not feeling right to you. But if you're not feeling right, talk to your physician about it. You'd be surprised, you know, little bit of medication adjustment or whatever can make a world of a difference to your life and those around you.
Right. And then the change in habits to change.
Yes. Exercise, hydration.
Right. Yes. And I was just thinking of something and it kind of slipped my mind, but just the simple, gratitude. I'm thinking, like for instance, especially after those of us here in Central Texas or in Texas, the whole state. Right? Last week, I didn't have power for a week, and when the power finally came on, and I could start my Keurig coffee I was like, I even think I took a picture of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, coffee hot. And it's warm. And I could take off a couple layers of sweatshirts. Because thank God there was heat again, because it was below freezing. I mean, it was
Coffee, I'll be honest, we don't have a Keurig. We have like the French brew, French press thingamadoodle.
yeah.
Because when our electricity went off, our gas went off too. Don't ask me why, I have no idea. But when we were able to have coffee, that was like the first thing I ran. Like you see these videos on YouTube, I was like running to get to my coffee.
Yeah.
Because that was like, oh, like it was my comfort, you know, it was my comfort. So
Yeah. Well, that's
it's the
absolutely.
little things, right? It really is the little things. So
Put my hand on it. I was like, I will never take you for granted.
no, the warm coffee and little caramel drizzle for me. So
It was all.
no, there are other little things. So we definitely, those of us in Texas, we're not going to complain anymore about the 150-degree heat. We're going to just, and it's like 70 degrees today, I think. So.
Well, that's it. The power went out. It was below freezing for a week. The power comes on within 24 hours. It wasn't even 24 hours. I'm at the park watching the waterfalls and, you know, stopping in mud with the dogs and taking off my light jacket because it's 76 degrees.
I know. It is what it is. This is Texas for you.
Yeah,
but we're going to be grateful, and it is what it is.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for contributing just some real life. This is some real life. Let's just sit down and have some coffee and talk about that. This can be really difficult. These are some things that you can integrate, because the truth is we are all doing that every day. Right?
It's true.
Like, how can I be my best self today?
Absolutely.
And what is, and you know, to get the guilt and to let that part go, and to just
give yourself grace.
Give yourself
grace. Yeah, for sure.
Because I don't think most caregivers knew they were going to be caregivers until like right up to that day, or are not prepared or not educated, and are like, oh, I don't know what to do, and are yet fighting the good fight and loving their way through it. And
absolutely,
remember, you're doing this because it's a place of love, and you'll get through it. You'll get through it. That's true. And then to look for those resources, and, you know, including like what you do with Blue Water Homecare. And there are a variety of things. And I know many caregivers have no idea what resources are there, because how would they know unless they're a part of it? You know,
it's true. And a lot of people just call us on the phone. You know, we're kind of one of the Central Texas, you know, resources for folks. We can help to connect them. That's one of my favorite things. If it's not something that we can help someone with, we can help to connect them with our community partners. And so that's a wonderful thing. Since I'm in the business, I'm a nurse, I'm going to send you to a good agency. We can also help in, you know, when we're providing care for a client and their family, we can also help the client's family get trained on how to change somebody's brief in a bed, you know, how to safely, you know, transfer somebody from the bed to the, you know, the potty chair or something like that. So that's something that we do that's important, and we believe in that. And we have managers and trainers in our company that actually will go out to the homes and actually will provide training when we're providing, you know, care, and we'll be able to help those loved ones, so that when we're not there, if we're not providing 24/7 care, then we will be able to make sure that they're equipped with that confidence, and they know physically how to do it, because there's tips and tricks to be able to safely transfer someone. So those are some things that we can offer.
Was that not a whole semester class for nursing students? The basic.
I know. Do you remember that?
It's a whole semester.
Making an occupied bed. Remember that?
Yes. Yes. The bathing, the safe transfers, how to keep yourself safe, how to protect. It is a course, and
it is a course.
And yet caregivers are like, okay, day one, you need to know it all. How are you going to do that? And
it's really hard. And then we have people that are not in hospital beds. We have people that are in just their regular beds, which is always a little more challenging. I mean, I've been known to hop up on somebody's bed and change them. I mean, I have story after story after story about those situations. And sometimes it's not pretty. I've actually gotten a lot better. You can ask my team. They say that I'm like really good now. So I can do it now.
Well, the good news for everyone listening is we are going to post all the information on how to get a hold of Jennifer, about Blue Water with some resources, and more too on our social media. If you follow Doggies for Dementia, we have resources on there, as well as our website, which I am updating this week because
awesome.
Because I am. I need to.
Yay.
Yeah, that's like blowing the box out of the water. No more box. What more are we going to add here? And that's a beautiful thing. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me. It's been wonderful. Have a great day.
Thank you. And in your comments, leave questions and stuff. We'll get back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Thanks. Have a great one. Bye.
Bye.